Hello. Can I have your attention? We'll go ahead and get started with the seminar. My name is Fred Kaiser. I'm volunteering here. I'm helping facilitate this seminar for Paul Pearson. I want to welcome you to the Chevrolet Theater here at the Corvette Museum. I think you'll find this particular seminar very interesting and informative. I've known Paul for quite a few years. I'm sure you'll walk out of the room knowing a lot more about the C7 nav system. You'll be a lot more comfortable and confident when you interface with it. And Paul not only knows it very well technically, but he's also very good from an interpersonal standpoint in explaining it to you so you can pick it up. At the end of the seminar, we do have a limited number of discs to hand out, and Paul will speak in a little more detail about them, what's on them. But I do want to encourage you to just take one per group, whatever size your group is. They're not write protected, so you can copy them at home for any of your friends or family. We only have 100 here, and there's more than 100 of you, so we don't want any groups, more than one, to take one, please. And lastly, someone previously left a set of glasses up here. Some people call them pairs of glasses. I think it's probably from a previous seminar, but if any of you are missing them, we have them up here. Okay? With that, then, I want to welcome Paul to the stage here, and we'll learn quite a bit about the C7 nav system.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. How's everybody doing today? Hot? How many folks have attended one of my seminars in the past? I've been doing the navigation seminars since 2008. I did a series on the C6 navigation system, and now I've picked up doing the C7. Just a quick show of hands, how many folks have attended a seminar previously? Okay, a few. How many C7 owners or about to be owners in the audience? All right, good. Good. Yeah, please give yourselves a round of applause. Fantastic car. Are you enjoying yours as much as I'm enjoying mine? Outstanding. Okay, now I have to ask the question about the nav system, because like with the C6, I always have to figure out if I have a hostile audience. Do we have anybody that really hates the system? I got one hand in the back, a few down here. Okay, my name is Fred Kaiser, and okay. In all seriousness, I'm hoping that, like I did with the C6 nav system, I can break the system down to make it a little bit more intuitive than the manual, or perhaps working your way through it. The first thing I always like to tell people, everybody's used to using a Garmin or a TomTom. It's not a Garmin or a TomTom. Everybody has gonna have figured that out the first time they started messing around with the system, so it's a little bit different. You need to take that book of knowledge and put it away. And no, please don't use the screen for the nav to stick the suction cup for your Garmin on. I can't tell you the number of times people have approached me on the C6 nav particularly and said, the only thing this is good for is a place to stick my Garmin. I know where I stand at that point, and I've got a long way to dig up and out in order to help and try to get that person happy and comfortable, but I'm hoping we're not yet there on the C7, so let's see what we can do. So first thing I've been asked to talk about is a little bit of old business. Like all the hands that went up for C7s and all the hands that went up for people that are about to own C7s. Is anybody having a problem where you turn your driver mode selector and your instrument panel image doesn't change? Okay, good. That means it's getting out there. There's a section here, see the link to driver mode, and when you go into the settings menu on the IP and select display theme, if it says anything other than link to driver mode, your gauges aren't going to configure when you move your knob in the center. And originally the cars were supposed to ship from the plant that way, and they don't. They ship defaulted to sport mode. It's gotten out to many of the dealers now, and I think during the course of the PDI process, they're actually making that swap so it's blind to all of you. But if you happen to get yourself in a car and you turn the knob and your IP doesn't change, it's not broken. It just needs to be configured to link to driver mode. So I just wanted to get that out because a lot of people are having problems. A lot of people were taking their cars back to the dealerships right after the initial production rollout. So there was a little bit of confusion about that scenario. So old business taken care of. We're going to talk today about the 7th generation navigation system for the Stingray. We're going to talk almost exclusively about navigation functionality, so we're not going to delve off into the infotainment system. Those of you that were here a year ago, I did the seminar introducing the infotainment system, and it was 95% infotainment system and 5% navigation. Today's going to be 99% navigation and 1% infotainment, only because they share a screen. So the agenda that we're going to try to put forward, and if you can see the yellow line scrolling up, you've passed your eye test, and there's nothing we can do about that. There's a scan problem with the high-def display and the VGA cable, so we're stuck with the yellow line scanning, so I apologize for that. This is our agenda. Anybody that's attended any of my C6 navigation seminars are going to be immediately comfortable with it and recognize the approach that we're doing. I set the seminars up and I set the tutorials and the logic up so each step builds on the next. So when you get the nav, the first thing you're going to look at is how to enter an address, and then how to integrate your contact list, and then how to look for points of interest, and then how to do more complex searches on the system. So it's going to be basics, but it's not going to be all-inclusive, and I'm going to try to get a few tips and tricks in there to make it a little bit more palatable for you so that it's a little bit more intuitive and makes a little bit more sense. So, basic agenda that we're covering is going to be an overview, and then system nav basics, and then additional features. I like the did you know stuff, so there's a couple that I'm going to put in there. Access to the tutorial. As Fred said, I've got 100 CDs containing the navigation tutorial, a file on how to introduce your own custom point of interest files. I have setting up the system, a quick start guide, so when you show up at the dealership, these are the things if you want to get in your car and get going after you take delivery. There's a quick start setup in there that will get your phone paired up with Bluetooth and get you able to enter an address and change the radio station and get on your way. I have a lot of material to cover this morning in a short period of time to do it. My seminars typically are 90 minutes. We only had a 60-minute window to fit this in today, so if I hurry, and I'm not very good at hurrying, anybody that's been in one of my seminars previously can tell you that, but if I hurry, I can get through this in about 45 to 50 minutes, and that'll leave about 10 to 15 minutes for question and answer. I'm available and around the museum for the rest of the day. A couple of people have already approached me. I'm going to go with them out to their car and go over a couple of things. I'm happy to do that with anybody as long as your car is in Franklin, and as long as, I can accommodate. And I understand parking has been different. There's about 10 times the number of folks at the museum as there are at any one of these events annually. So when we have the Labor Day celebration here, it's typically between 800 and 1,000 people, and that's a big turnout, and we're very happy about that. There's between 8,000 and 10,000 people that are in attendance at this event, so if it takes you a little long to pull in someplace, or if it takes you a little long to get shuttled someplace, that's part of the reason, because the system's a little overloaded, I think, right now. So if you brought home a new Corvette, and we're a year into this now, so if you brought home a used Corvette, restore your system defaults. From the main center screen, there's a settings menu. Scroll down to the system settings, scroll down to the bottom, and just select user defaults. There'll be 3 different things you can zero out in there: your personal data, your address information, and your favorites. Wipe all of that stuff out and start from scratch. You don't want a car that was a demo car or a show car, if it happened to have been a used car that you brought home. The last thing you want to be doing is navigating home to somebody else's house, for example. Or maybe you do. That's entirely up to you. But set up your user preferences, and we're going to talk a little bit about that today. We're going to talk about saving your home location, and I say close proximity because I'm always advised to tell people don't set your home location. If your car is ever stolen, the last thing you want them to be able to do is press one button and drive to your house, because they know you're not there because they've got your car. So if you live close to a police station, just for fun, or if you don't worry about things like that, or you have a large Doberman or a Rottweiler or otherwise at home waiting, put your home address. Please, let's take care of that as quick as we can. Read the owner's manual, and then after you're done getting frustrated with the owner's manual, read my tutorial to reinforce what you should have learned in the owner's manual. All of the information is there, 95% of the information is correct in the owner's manual, but it's not always in a context that's familiar and easy to translate into what you're going to do in the car. And the most important one is take some time to practice. It's really, really critical that you get comfortable with the system, because typically if you're using a navigation system, you're on a trip, you're in unfamiliar surroundings, you need it to work, you want it to work, and sometimes your stress level is high because you're trying to get from one place to another place in a certain period of time. Anything you enter wrong, the system is going to accept willingly and then give you back just as equally bad information. So you want to always give the system as much accurate information as you possibly can. We're going to talk a little bit through the menu structure, navigation preferences, and what you see when you bring up the navigation system menu. This is from hitting the menu button from within the navigation app. So navigation voice preferences, current location. Current location is a neat feature. If you made the most out of your C6 nav system, or sometimes with Garmin's, you can direct input GPS coordinate information. The C7 does not retain that information. The designers that were working on this system decided that almost everything has an address. If it doesn't have an exact address, it's got a crossing street someplace that needs it. These are all of the things that you can enter into the Stingray navigation system. If you want to take it off-roading, I think I applaud you for making the most out of the use of your car, but there's no way to get to that campsite 3 miles into the woods just on GPS coordinates. But what you can do is anytime you call up the current location from the menu screen, it's going to give you a real-time snapshot of your GPS coordinates, and they update as you move. So use the navigation system, navigate to whatever closest crossing street that you can find or intersection, and then bring up current location. And you can kind of work your way pretty close just using the current location display on the screen. We're going to touch on you. Did somebody? No, okay, I'm hearing this. Okay, we're going to talk a little bit to the 3 important ones that I'm going to touch on predominantly from the menu are current location, map view, and routing preferences. So here's the basic map screen, and on the top half of the menu, 2 of the ones that we want to talk about, current location and map view, and on the bottom half of the map screen is going to be the routing preferences. So map view is the first thing. Map view you can configure through the menus, but you can also configure from the nav screen. So it's not critical that you get it all right in the menu structure before you head out on a trip, and I'll talk to that on a subsequent screen. Routing preferences, on the other hand, are very important. If you don't turn on use freeways, for example, in the settings, imagine how long it's going to take to get from California to Bowling Green. So always, 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 you want to go in and make sure at a minimum use freeways is on. Carpool lanes, slow traffic, time-restricted roads, tunnels, toll roads, all of those things are entirely up to you. I'm going to say use freeways is mandatory. Even if you don't want to route via the freeway, give the system the option to plan your trip, because it will do some crazy things to get you to a road that not use a freeway. Route style. How many are happy with routing and routing calculations with the system? Anyone? Show of hands. Anyone? Has anyone had success getting to where they need to get to? Did you use it to come here? All right, good. We're making progress. Route styles are a little bit deceiving. For those of you coming out of the 6th generation Corvette, they do things a little bit differently in the 7th generation system. For starters, we lost the normal routing, which is really kind of a hybrid. It's basically the quickest way to get there. The names of these are a little bit deceptive. Fast, for example, is not the fastest way to get there. It wants to put you on the road with the fastest speed limit. Okay? So it's going to choose highways over secondary roads every single time. It's going to choose higher volume, higher speed roads and it defaults to fastest. Eco-friendly, don't ask. Don't ask. And if anybody's gone in to edit the eco profile, again, please don't ask. You have the option of turning on or off whether or not you have a roof rack, and you have the option of turning on or off whether or not you're towing a trailer. Really? What demographic were we talking to with this? Eco-friendly is supposed to use an eco-optimized journey. It's going to do the very best to get the best combination of fewest hills and not overly long way around type trips. It works a little bit. If you try an eco-friendly trip, it works a little bit like the normal route in the C6, but it's still not exactly that logic in the algorithm. Shortest, again, it's a little bit deceiving. Shortest is not what's going to take the least amount of time to get there, but it's the fewest miles. It's going to look at your trip, point A to point B, and if even by 1 mile, this particular route, avoiding this highway or cutting across this back road or whatever, is shorter, it's going to choose that, and it's going to choose that every time. So if you default to shortest, and you like to take those fun country back road trips, that might be your ticket. But it also doesn't take into account the type of neighborhood it's going to bring you through, and it doesn't take into account that you shouldn't go through Atlanta at 5 o'clock in the afternoon. So keeping all of that stuff in mind, remember it's not the shortest duration, it's the shortest miles. So I've had several conversations with people that end up troubled by the results that having only those two things present. And the other piece of it within the route style is the algorithm that it uses to calculate the journey. You're going to find that sometimes the amount of time that it tells you it's going to take a trip conflicts with what you know to be true. The system actually takes into account speed limits. The system assumes that you're going to drive the speed limit. We don't. But it's a different algorithm than what a Garmin, for example, uses. They use more of a rolling average speed, and their times tend to present shorter. But if you get started on a 300-mile journey with the C7 system, you're going to find that the time starts ticking down as you're driving towards it. So you almost have to think of it as a worst-case scenario for arrival, because it's looking at the roads, it's looking at traffic flow, and it's looking at speed limits it has in the database. The minute you start going a couple of miles an hour over the speed limit, it adjusts, and you're going faster than what the route planned for, and that time is going to count backwards. And you normally end up getting there at about the time you thought you were going to get there, even though it told you it was going to take half an hour longer to get there, when you set out to arrive. Let's see, and there was another piece that I wanted to talk to a little bit about that. When you enter your trip for the very first time, it flashes very quickly and shows you a miles figure, the amount of miles to go. And when you first look at it, you get very excited because let's say it was 500 miles. And then you turn away from the screen and you put your seatbelt on and you do some other things and you get started to set off on your trip and you look and the screen now says 701 miles. And you say, well, wait a minute, it didn't move. I didn't move, so what just happened? When the system sets up, it wants to get you able to navigate as quickly as possible. So it starts it looks at where you're leaving from and your destination, and it takes a look at basically as the crow flies mileage. And then it starts working outward from where you are. And the reason for that is you want to get going. You want to get out of your driveway. And they made the decision to calculate forward so that it doesn't keep you sitting there while you have to wait for it to churn and come up with the route and not give you directions, particularly to someplace that you don't know. So it's calculating forward, and it's then going back in and adjusting the miles once it's actually set about a route, looking at your traffic, looking at your preferences, looking at your route profile that you've got set up. So that's the reason for the slightly irregular mileage reading that comes up. Quick chat about the screen. Everybody knows, I guess, if you push the compass, nothing happens. If you push the clock, date, and time, it'll bring up the clock, date, and time screen. So that's one of those areas that if you're up too high on the data box and you press the time, you'll basically turn off the GPS screen and bring up a very nice clock with a beautifully configured calendar date display. Useless for navigation, but pretty nonetheless. Up the top are the temperature readings as the car sees the outside temperature. If you push that, it will bring up your climate control overlay on the info screen. You can't adjust anything from it, but if you want to see what vent you're on, what temperatures you're set at, and the fan speed, you can get a graphical view of that by pressing on the temp. Vehicle location is a very interactive display, and the information box on the right is a very interactive display. If you start off, if you look at this screen, and I'm not sure if you can make out this little cross-checkered flags right there, and it says 10:01. That's your estimated time of arrival. There are 3 modes on that box that you can cycle through. If you press right here, you'll cycle through estimated time of arrival, estimated time en route, and lastly, miles to go on your trip. So you can change any of those while you're in motion. You can cycle from ETA to ETE to miles. If you touch on the body of the dialog box, you'll bring up a turn list if you're under route guidance, and you bring up waypoint access if you're under route guidance with a waypoint selected. And we're going to talk to vehicle location in a couple of screens. So here's the 3 examples. If you're set up and you've gotten under route guidance, it tells me I'm leaving at 10:53 in the morning, I'm going to arrive at 10:01. It does adjust for time zone changes, so your arrival time is your arrival time in that time zone. Don't ask me why I know that and why I'm making a point of it, because I didn't believe it, and I was like, oh good, and I still have to adjust to Central Time, so that's better, I'm going to get there a little bit earlier. I didn't. If you press it again, there's your estimated time en route, and the display changes to a little clock, and you're going to be about 12 hours and 8 minutes on your journey. And starting out, I had 795 miles to go. So those are the 3 interactions that you can do with that box. You can cycle through them all the time. I'm constantly looking to see how many miles I've gone, how many miles I have left, what time I'm going to get there, and how many more hours am I going to be in the car. So the other part of that screen, if you touch on the body of the box under route guidance, you'll get a turn list. And the turn list is a little deceiving. In 3/10 of a mile, you're going to turn right onto South Park Place. And it doesn't read from left to right, and it doesn't read from right to left. It goes from right to extreme left to the middle. So in this, I have to travel that far to do that. And I'm going to then travel that far and do that onto that. So it's a little bit deceiving than what other systems use for their turn lists. But navigation screen, we talked a little bit about. If you have the map screen up and you tap anywhere on the body of the map screen, everybody's going to be familiar with the ability to bring up the menu dialog boxes. While this is up, if you press on the navigation icon subsequently, you will cycle through your available map views. And they will cycle from heading up to north up to a 3D topographical view, and keep pressing it and you can keep cycling around all the views. So that's one of the things that's in the settings menu, but you can get to it just as easily from a tap on the map screen. So at the very top, you've got your quick access menu, and that allows you to get back to frequently used programs. Tap the screen, it brings up the quick access tray. How many know that the quick access tray is editable? Okay, a couple of people, good. The quick access tree is editable for everybody that didn't raise their hands. And to do that, you press and hold on any icon on the screen, and it'll put it into edit mode, and it'll put these brackets around it. What you can then do is you can reconfigure the quick access screen. So for me, for example, I have in my top tray the default 3, which are audio, telephone, and navigation. Then I've added Siri Eyes Free, and I've added weather. So from that one screen, I can go back and forth, get my weather forecast. I can go to Siri if I need to do something with my phone while I'm driving. Come back to navigation, all without having to go back out to the home screen, which is it's the best part of that feature, because otherwise you have to go to the home screen, press the weather icon, and go back. When you're done editing, you can see it's in edit mode, press home button to exit. So if you press the home hard key down below the radio, it'll take it out of edit mode, and it will leave those there. When you want to make them go away, or when you want to change them, put it back into edit mode by pressing and holding on any icon. The brackets will come up. If you want to take Pandora out of that top menu, put your finger on Pandora, drag it back down towards the body. So you press and hold it and drag it down, and it will come out of the top screen. Deleting it from the quick access tray does not delete the program. You can't delete the programs that are hard-coded in, so you can't do any damage here. You can also rearrange any of these icons if you want them in a different configuration, move them to a different position, press your finger on it, drag it to where you want. If you drag it into a bracketed area, it will put it in between those two icons. So you can move them around, put them however you want them, and then press save, you'll be back to your normal screen. So within navigation, we're going to talk a little bit about general information on the navigation and settings. Your main interaction screen with the navigation system is down here. So again, at half of the screen, we'll bring up the zoom commands, reset map view, your destination, and your menu. Reset map view, everybody should know, if you've pressed on the map to scroll your location anywhere and you want to get back to your actual vehicle location, use the reset button. A lot of people are fearful of reset buttons because they don't necessarily know exactly what they're resetting. So in this case, if you've scrolled out of frame to go and look at something else on the map, you can zoom out, scroll to Arizona, take a look at an address, zoom in. When you're done, just press reset and it will automatically bring the vehicle back to where you are. And then your menu configuration button is there. So, navigation search uses autocomplete. It's going to work from full addresses first, then states, then cities, then intersections, then streets. They're grouped by distance. It's always working in proximity. One of the things that you all know probably very well about Garmin, if you want to go someplace, the first thing you have to tell it is what state do you want to go to. And the next thing you have to tell it is what city do you want to go to. This assumes that you want to navigate someplace in close proximity unless you tell it otherwise, and the way that you tell it otherwise is with subsequent identifiers. So if you're entering search dialog box, and I was sitting in a parking lot in Florida when I did this, and I said I want to go to 350 Corvette Drive, because in my mind there's only one, I want to go to the National Corvette Museum. So I put in 350 Corvette Drive and pressed go. Well, turns out there's a 350 Corvette Avenue in Sebring, Florida. That was the closest thing and the best match for what I entered into that dialog box. Not anywhere near where I wanted to go, but it was a very, very close match. It had the 350, it had the Corvette, so the system was pretty happy. So there's all of these results. There's 10 of them that popped up all in southern Florida. However, if I simply amend the zip code to the end of that, separated with a comma, so 350 Corvette Drive, comma space 42101, which happens to be the zip code for Bowling Green, Kentucky, then there's only one. First tip of the day, zip codes are your best friend in this system, no matter what you're doing. If you're searching POIs, if you're searching addresses, if you're searching streets or intersections, learn the zip code for where you're going and put that, if nothing else, put the zip code in your contact list. Because it's easy to spell Bowling Green, Kentucky wrong. It's easy to get a state abbreviation wrong when you're typing it in. The system can only work with accurate information. It's going to try, and what's worse about this system, it won't just tell you no. It'll tell you what it thinks it understood and what it thinks you want. So not only do you get bad information, but it will give you information to build upon the bad information that you've already given it, and you're still not any closer to where you wanted to get to, and that's a point of frustration for people. So to avoid that, learn the zip code, use the zip code, and it takes a lot of the mystery out of the system. How many people have ever seen this screen? How many, when you saw that screen, were you separating your information with spaces? Don't. It hates spaces. Well, actually, it doesn't hate spaces. It ignores them completely. It has no idea what you're talking about. So you can see what happened here. I put in, and does everybody know that this search box is progressive, and you can't really see it in this menu field? But when you enter something for the first time, you have to type it all the way across. When you go to enter it a subsequent time, it wants to fill it in for you, and it starts filling it in one word at a time all the way across, and where you've typed and confirmed, it'll be a bright white, and where you haven't confirmed, it'll be a duller, almost a grayish white. What it's doing is it says, oh, hey, you went there before, and is this where you want to go? And you literally can just take the cursor and drag it to the end and press go, and you'll be done typing, if you've done it before. If you haven't, it will start trying to fill in from the database. But what I did in this case was I said 1619 space W space G space Cal and saw that it had filled in. I said, yeah, go. And what it came back with was, wow, 1619 for a city. I have no idea what you're talking about. So it ignored everything that I had even told it previously. So always, as much accurate information as possible is always going to yield the best results, and missing information can result in unpredictable or undesirable results. This is about as undesirable as it can get when you're sitting in your driveway at 5 o'clock in the morning trying to get on the road someplace, and it just keeps coming back and saying, no, you can't find it, but I went there last year. To enter destinations, you can work through voice recognition and screen entry, streets, intersections, freeway on-ramps. There's a list of recent destinations. I don't know if you've ever clicked on the recent destinations button, but for those of us that have had our cars for a while, every destination that we've ever entered is in that list. If you just keep scrolling to the bottom, you'll get to the earliest addresses that you navigated to. Contacts, either vehicle or paired phone, and I'm going to talk a little bit about that. POIs and points of interest from the database or custom POIs that you've input to the system, and I'm going to talk a little bit about that. And destination saved as favorites, not to be confused with destination saved as contacts. So, again, here's a map screen. I've selected destination. I've started typing in 600 Corvette. I would have appended the zip code to that and been on my way. If you don't know the number, don't put it in. It knows the street. It can deal with just streets. If you know the street you're trying to get to intersects with a street that you know but you don't know its name, enter it like this. So for Bowling Green, Kentucky, if I simply put in Main Street, period, comma 42101, it's going to come back. It returns a search result and says, okay, there are 6 streets that have Main in them, and there are 3 intersections that intersect Main Street. Could it be one of these? And it's basically giving you these options to drill down through your search, but it can search just on streets and crossing streets and intersections. So, contacts. How many people have smartphones? Many, many people. How many people have their smartphone paired with their vehicle? Many, many people. Good. How many people use the contact list on your smartphone to enter a navigation destination on the system? Awesome. Some people. Okay. The system as it exists has access to 2 contact lists. The first is a vehicle-generated contact list that you create when you navigate to a destination and save it as a contact. The second is the contact list that's available on your smartphone. So if you're paired via Bluetooth, you'll have to tell the vehicle which contact list you want to be on. So you have to select Change Contact List, because when you first start out, this is all you see. And people can't understand. I've got 3,000 phone numbers and addresses on my phone, and I don't understand why it doesn't see it. Every time you get in the car, you need to remind it that, go look at my phone, because you can pair up to 10 devices. It will only use one of them at a time, and it can also use contacts that you've saved to the vehicle. So when you select on Change Contact List and you have a paired device via Bluetooth, it says, well, which one do you want to use? Do you want to use the vehicle, or do you want to use, in my case, my iPhone? You want to use your iPhone. But the second contact list is just that. It's the one from your phone. One thing that I like to point out, the very, very first time you pair your smartphone device with the car, it takes a snapshot of your contact list. When you go and enter a new contact in your phone and then go running back out to the car because you want to see it on the nav screen, it's not going to be there right away. And it might take a few seconds. Again, just like with how it plans the navigation destination and plans your route, it takes a snapshot of that contact list so that when you get back in the car, you will be presented with what it last knew to be correct. But if you just were sitting in front of your computer, you looked up an address, you plugged it into your phone, you ran to the car because you're late for an appointment, it's not going to be there until the screen updates. So it can take 3 to 5 minutes for that information to present itself. The second thing, and I've been guilty of this for a number of years, if I'm only putting in a name and they're not a business and, I just want to put in some other way to reference them, I'm guilty of putting their first name and their company name all on the same line in first name. And then just to be safe, I'll put it in last name. And then just in case, I'll put it in company name. So no matter how I sort the contact list, because I may not remember how I sorted it the last time. This system hates that, and it's going to ignore those contacts because it wants to file something on either first name or last name. It won't file them on both, and if they're both the same, it doesn't know where to put it, so that contact will probably never appear in your database. So if you have contacts that you're sure you've entered, and you can bring up your phone and say, look, it's either right here, and show it to the screen just for emphasis, it still won't see them. So that refresh can take a couple of minutes, so just bear with that and keep that in mind. So, how many people have saved a contact as a vehicle contact? How many have gone through the save process? It's a little bit frustrating, but it's doable. There are a lot of prompts that you end up having to go through. It's rewarding in the end because anything that appears in your contact list when you bring up the navigation menu with a little checkered flag to it means it's got a destination that it can recognize and it can take you there, so very quickly you can tag the flag and be on your way. So you can save destinations to vehicle contacts. When you press from the Go Save screen, which isn't up here, screen that you would navigate to, or from the telephone screen where you would call someone, this is the trigger screen for saving contacts and saving addresses. That Go, Call, Save screen. So remember that. That's the only place that you can save a contact. It's the only place that you can save an address. If you're not on the Go Save screen, you're going to have it as a destination. You're going to bring up the memory button. You're going to press and hold, or you're going to try to say save, and it's not going to be there. Go there, and it's going to say, sorry, can't do that in this mode. So saving, create a new contact or add to an existing contact. The first time you're saving something, it's always going to be create a new contact. But if you're saving your friend Fred's house, and you know his home address, and you happen to learn his work address, you save his home address by creating a new contact, and it'll ask you if you want to save it sorted by first name or last name, and it'll say, do you want to put notes with it, or do you want to make a custom category, and it takes you through a whole bunch of prompts. After the third one, there's a shortcut down the bottom. You can skip all of that and just say save, and it'll take you out of that routine. But then now you've got Fred's work address that you want to put in, so you go through this exact same the address like we were entering it as a destination, get to the Go Save screen, press save again, and then say add to existing contact, and it's going to present you with this list at that point, and all you're going to do at that point is select the one that you want to add it to. It will amend it, you can press save, and then you'll have that saved as a vehicle contact. So why would you want to do that? You want to do that because if you're sharing the vehicle with a spouse and you've got stuff on your phone, they've got stuff on their phone, but you both might have an address that you need to get to. If you save it as a vehicle address, or save it as a vehicle contact, it's phone independent. They are saved directly on the head unit of the radio. It doesn't matter who gets in the car, that information is going to be available to them. If you left your phone at home, that address is still going to be in the vehicle. So we'll talk a little bit to that on a subsequent screen. So now where are we? We've learned how to enter an address. We've learned how to get comfortable with entering an address. We've talked a little bit to your contact list, and now you can select a contact, press the checkered flag, and navigate to that. So the next logical thing to talk to are points of interest information. So POIs can search by name, by category name or phone number. Another very, very important point to minimize frustration. POIs always search nearby first. A point of interest by definition is a point that you might be interested in seeing when you're nearby. It isn't going to return a POI search result for a restaurant in California if you're in Kentucky. It just doesn't look there. Even if it's in the database, even if the name is there isn't any amount of praying or cursing that is going to get you to that point of interest in California from this location in Kentucky. So how do you fix that? You fix that by pressing on the Search Near button. And again, just like with the Garmin, you have to tell it what state you want to look in, and then you tell it what city you want to look in, and then you start drilling down and defining the category that you want to work with. So when you're under route guidance, you have one set of select search criteria available, and that's these over here, and these will automatically come up on the screen. So if you have a route entered, if you're traveling from Nashville, Tennessee to Bowling Green, Kentucky, you can say, I want to do a POI search, and you press search near, and that brings up select search area, and first option it gives you is a long route. So you're on a trip, you're starting to get hungry, you want to grab a bite to eat for lunch, you press search, POIs, a long route, and then it comes back to the POI category list, and then you can say search for food. And now up the top, it will have defaulted to POI search a long route. Same can be said for near destination. You're in Nashville, into Bowling Green, Kentucky, you know you're going to want to have dinner when you get there, or you don't have a hotel room planned already when you get there. You press search near destination and do your category search for your restaurant or your hotel. If you need a hotel, you can bring up the hotel's name in the list. You can press the hotel, bring up the info box. You can actually call it right from the car's phone while you're on your trip and dial them and make a reservation. But if you don't tell it where to look, it's never going to find them. If you're not under route guidance, you only have two choices, and those are these two choices here. Nearby is the default. Every time you bring up a POI search not under route guidance, it defaults to near. And nearby is 100-mile radius around you plus or minus 10 miles. So that's nearby. Another location is how you do everything else. Maybe you don't know the place that you're going to, and you don't know the zip code, or you know the zip code but you don't know anything else about it. You can click on another location and you can enter just the zip code, and it will bring up a city list that it recognizes according to that zip code. You press that city list, and lo and behold, it brings you right back to a POI search screen by category in that location now. So now you can enter looking for a restaurant in California from Bowling Green, Kentucky, and it will actually find it that way. So was that helpful at all? Does that clear anything up for anyone? Okay. These are fun. You can search just on categories. If you feel like pizza and you don't know where there's a pizza place, just type in pizza. It's got keep that in mind. This is the same as all of the other POI searches. If you want to search for pizza in Honolulu, Hawaii, you have to say search near, put in 96815 for the zip code, press go, it'll bring up Honolulu, and then you can start looking for pizza places in Hawaii. If you want to know about a pizza place locally, it's going to bring up any point of interest that has the word pizza in its name, in its description, in its address, anywhere in the database, it's going to come up. So here's Domino's, Little Caesars, Papa John's, on and on and on and on. You can do that for barbecue. You can do that for seafood. You can do that for hamburgers, however you want to approach it. You can enter generic search terms. Here's another one, seafood. If you're feeling like having seafood, enter seafood in the search nearby, and off to the races with a list of potential places for seafood. All right, so these are some examples of changing that screen. Press the search nearby button, and search either nearby or another location, or if you're under route guidance, these are the options available, a long route or near destination. So POIs, how to search and how to refine the search area. So, POIs, searching via any method is always going to generate a list of POI categories. So here's your search. So in this case, I had changed locations to Bowling Green, Kentucky. That's the basic list that everybody's looked at. Let's push the POI button. Select from that list hotels or travel and lodging. It's going to give you hotels and motels. Select a particular hotel, it's going to give you this particular information. This is the go save screen that I was talking about. If you want to save this as a favorite, or if you want to save this as a contact, you do it only from this screen. You can save it just like you can save a radio frequency on your memory buttons, and you can save it to your vehicle contact list, but it can only be done from this screen. And anything, if it's a phone number that you've brought up, if you want to save the Hilton Garden Inn, from here you can either save it or you can save it to your memory locations. So now we've learned how to navigate to points of interest. So now we've got the ability to enter a trip, we've got the ability to stop someplace in between, so that's effectively a waypoint. So other than doing it that way, what if you want to make it a waypoint destination? You're already under route guidance and you've told the vehicle, you know, you're feeling hungry, I want to stop for lunch on my trip. So we're going to make it a waypoint. All you need to do to make a destination a waypoint is do everything you were going to do to navigate to it as a destination, and then press go. And if you're in a trip already, if you've got a destination planned, it's going to come up and say, you sure you want to do that? You're already navigating someplace. Do you want to go someplace else, or do you want to go here, then there? And you can add it as a waypoint, or set it as a new destination, or say, oh, I didn't mean to do that, and go ahead and cancel it. Once you've added it as a waypoint, and I told you earlier on the map screen, the turn dialog box where the ETA, ETE is, the body of that below where they show you the turn by turn. If you press that and you've got a navigation waypoint trip underway, this is the screen that you get. How many people have used the waypoint system with the nav and find it usable? Okay. From that screen, you can list your waypoints, you can optimize your waypoints, you can edit your waypoints. If you're running errands around town and you want to start and end back at your house, you can optimize your waypoints just by pushing the button, and it's going to give you the best route and which order you should go to those things in. If you're trying to get to California, want to stop in Bowling Green, Kentucky, and you press optimize, it's going to do just that. Okay, you're here, stop in Bowling Green, I want to take you to California. It would never send you to California and then Bowling Green. Although I'm going to tell you, you should always come back to Bowling Green. But you can also bring up the turn list, you can edit those. The turn list changes to an advanced turn list when you're under a waypoint trip. You can call up the turn list by pressing this button, and that will actually bring you to an avoid dialog screen, so you can actually avoid portions of the route. That way, if you're coming from the Northeast, and anybody that came down in the New England Caravan, or anybody that drives out of New York and comes here will immediately recognize this. You don't want to go across the George Washington Bridge, you want to go across the Tappan Zee Bridge. So it's going to try to route you across the George Washington Bridge, and if you want to avoid that, you plan a route. You can either create a waypoint that forces it to take you to the Tappan Zee Bridge, or you can select the George Washington Bridge and avoid it. So one of those two ways will get you ultimately to accomplish what you set out to accomplish, all from the waypoint dialog screen. I think somebody said, excuse me, how do you do that? There's two ways that you can do it. If you have a route set up, add a waypoint to your trip, and as a hint, even if you add your destination a second time and call it a waypoint, that'll get you the waypoint dialog. You can either add a waypoint that forces you onto a road below that would prompt you to go over the Tappan Zee rather than going over the GW, or if you set your destination twice, make one a destination, make the second one a waypoint, then you can get into the advanced dialog screen and press turn list. It'll bring up your list, and when you find the one that says George Washington Bridge, click the avoid button, and it'll ask you if you want to avoid it for 1 mile, 3 miles, 5 miles, or the entire road. Select whichever one makes sense. Generally for the GW, you'd say the entire road, and it will calculate a new route for you, excluding the George Washington. Is that helpful? Okay, next. Saving a destination. So there's two ways to save. You can save addresses, contacts, points of interest on the map, locations, to the vehicle contact list. You can also save them as favorites. So the choice is yours. There's reasons for doing either one. Saving it to the vehicle contact list makes it accessible, but it's going to be in a sort of a searchable format in a list, just like the contact list from your phone. Saving it as a vehicle favorite is a good way to replace the missing home icon from the C6 navigation screen. So one is going to basically give you one-touch access from any application within the MyLink system, and the other one is going to give you access to it in the call setup and in the navigation setup. So in order to do that, if you want to save it as a vehicle favorite, you again need to be on the Go Save screen. This is the trigger for saving anything navigation or telephone related. So remember that. If you don't see this screen, don't even bother trying to save it. So from here, once you have an address called up, or a phone number called up, or a person's contact, or a waypoint, or a POI, get to this screen and then make your decision. If you want to save it as a vehicle favorite, press the chevron. It will bring up your favorites, and then press and hold, in this case, number 7, and lo and behold, it appears as a vehicle favorite. What's nice about that is if you're not in the navigation system, you've got Pandora playing, and you're listening to the radio, and you say, hey, I want to go home. You can press the menu, bring up your favorites, press that, it will automatically switch you to the navigation screen, it will automatically set you up to navigate, and all you'll have to do is press go, and it will start your trip to that favorite. These multi-mode favorites are great, but you only get 60 of them, maximum. So they can be anything. They can be MP3s, they can be Pandora stations, they can be XM stations, HD radio stations, AM, FM. They can be contacts, phone numbers, addresses, points of interest, points that you've selected on the map. Anything you can press that will bring you to this screen will let you save or will let you add it to a favorite. And does everybody know, one of the things that I try to have people do is save or only use set up on auto. So if you set your favorites menu up to auto display rather than to only display 5, display 15, display 60, if you set it up to auto, you can manipulate the menu from the touchscreen. You can bring it up, you can move over to select the other items on your list, and then you can make it go away. So, if you set it up for auto, it's very easy to do that, because how many people have tried setting it up for 60 and then basically have your entire screen taken up by an entire list of favorites and you can't see anything else and you can't figure out how to get it off the screen? I've actually had people disconnect their battery trying to get the favorites menu down from their screen. You can just swipe it right back down, press your finger and hold on it and just drag towards the bottom. It takes a little bit of a refinement. You've got to get used to doing that. It's not as intuitive as changing pages on an iPad, but just press and hesitate for a second and then drag down, and you can move it down, you can move it up. And you can do that anytime from any screen. You can bring up those favorites. You can swipe side to side. You can bring them the next layer up. So set it on auto and then swipe to get to where you want. When you get comfortable doing it, you don't even need to look at the screen because you know where to put your finger and then just drag. So that's saving to favorite locations. Yes? Swipe it one last time down. Oh, it works. Check your vehicle settings and make sure you're not set up to display 5. Because if you set up to display 5, it may be displaying it full time for you. It's very compliant, so if it thinks that you want to see him, it might be doing that. You should be able, literally though, to swipe that away. And I see another hand up, and I'm going to take one last question, and then I'm going to... It does not. That is stuck there forever. You can't make that map any bigger no matter how hard you wish. Same can be done with your vehicle location. You're on a road trip, you're here in Bowling Green, you came here from California, you went to a restaurant. Before you leave, you want to remember how to get back to your hotel, or you've gotten to the restaurant, you want to go there again tomorrow night, you want to mark it so you can easily navigate back to it. And if you touch the vehicle on your screen, it will bring up a dialog box. If you touch the dialog box, guess where it brings you? To the Go Save screen. So if you want to save it as a favorite, you press the chevron. If you want to save it as a contact, you press the save. So you can always mark your current location, future location. You can scroll up the map to anywhere and bring up a dialog box and save yourself to it. So you can mark a lot of locations that way. Yes. Not a lot. If you expand that, it'll give you any additional notes or any additional detail that are about that, other than information like POIs and things like that. In this particular case, because I was on I-95 in Florida, nothing. There's nothing there to talk about. If it's a POI, any notes that are in the note fields to the point of interest would come up when you press that. It doesn't let you add anything, or doesn't, it's not okay, do something else. It's an expanded dialog box. So, I missed the first part of that. The best way to do it is give it the least amount of information you can and then drill upward from there. So if you know the street and the zip code, start with that, and then maybe the house information is wrong, or the contact information in your phone is wrong, or otherwise. Starting with the zip code will get you generally in the right location to at least the city, and then you can navigate to intersections and then to streets, and then finally, work your way backwards to addresses. But that's the only advice, because not everything is in, and that's one thing that we always have to worry about, is the accuracy of the database that we're working with. So it is possible that where you're trying to get to, as far as the world of this GPS exists, isn't in there. But it's very, very few. That's very seldom the case. It's more often, Boulevard should, in my mind, always be BLVD. It's not. Sometimes it's BVD. Sometimes it's BL. Avenue should always be AVE, but sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's AV. Streets shouldn't have south or north other than S period, but sometimes they're S nothing and then the street name. Sometimes they use the word south and then the street name. Any slight discrepancy like that is enough to throw the database search out so that it won't return an address there for you. So if you think it's Main Street but you're not 100% certain, just put in Main. If you think it's in Franklin, Kentucky, but you're not positive, put in the zip code just to make sure the zip code meshes. Because the zip code database is quite complete, and it minimizes a lot of keyboard entry errors that we can make, and it minimizes the opportunity for us to enter something in a different context than what the system is looking for it in. So all of these favorites that you're saving, you remember in an earlier screen I saved that address to location number 7. That's terrible. I may not even remember what that was later on. So you can go in and you can edit and manage these things. You can rename them. You can rename contacts. You can rename information. So you can save it always from this screen, and then going into the settings, you can bring up your memory locations. You can select one. You can rename them. You can delete them. You can edit them to make them more meaningful. When this went in, it was 350 Corvette Drive. I edited it to say NCM, so it's something that becomes more meaningful for you. Yeah, of course. 1 minute. Oh my gosh, how did that happen? Wow, okay. Yeah, not even close. Skip that. That's the save stuff that we talked about. I want you to know all of this stuff is on the CDs that I have available. The entire PowerPoint presentation is on there. This is being videotaped. A video of this presentation is going to be made available online. Also, here's the 2 did-you-knows that I wanted to talk about. You can save custom POI files. So not only can you use the points of interest database, you can create a custom POI CSV file, and you can actually upload it to your system. And then additionally, does everybody know that your vehicle has a Series I free? So if you've got an iPhone or if you've got an Android that's got an active voice activation app, you can gain access to it through the center stack. You can check your text, you can compose a text, you can check your email, you can compose an email. You can ask it the weather, you can ask it directions, do a Google search, ask for information. So all of those things are available to your system. Not a lot of people know them. Ways to do them are actually contained in the information that's on this CD that I want to make available. There was a little bit to talk about traffic, a little bit to talk about weather, both optional systems and services, only available with an active XM subscription. Same thing, if you have XM Travel Link, you can get, I don't know if anybody's ever seen this, but if you call up a movie theater, it will give you the list of movies that are playing and the times that each one of those are playing, all from within the POI database. And also, if you bring up a gas station, whatever the current active fuel price is that they have published for their gas station, so you'll be able to comparison shop by fuel. This is the last slide. It's a little bit of comparisons. It's a good system when you get familiar and comfortable with it. It's a good system when you throw out the Garmin mindset. It's not a Garmin. The Garmin is written for the lowest common denominator user. This system could be, but it's not. So unfortunately, you've got to find a way to work through that, and that's some of what we've talked about here today. All of this information is always on my website. This information is on the CD, so it's available always for download, and it's based on a tutorial that I wrote called Navigation System Basics, and it expands on quite a bit of this stuff, and it's a step-by-step tutorial on how to get through. It was going to be a Q&A period, but now it's not going to be because we have less than a minute left, and there's another seminar coming in. So with that...